The modifiers you see here are all used for controlling light. For example, this is a Snoot, which puts the light kind of into a spotlight, often used for hair lights or for highlights in the background. And here we have barn doors, which allow you to open and close these leaves, these doors, to narrow the beam of light. And then finally, we have a grid, which again focuses the beam of light. So these modifiers are all about control. I don't want you to think that you have to own all of these in order to control your light. And so I wanted to introduce you to something called Cinefoil or black foil. And so this black foil is specifically made for using with lights. In other words, it's not going to melt your light, it's not going to catch on fire. It's actually usually used for theater lighting. But what I can do is if I carefully use this black foil, I can simulate the effects of some of these modifiers. And I can also save myself a lot of money by going DIY. So let's take a look at what I can do. So for example, let's say that I wanted to make barn doors. All I need to do is cut 2 sheets, or you could do 4, but I could cut 2 sheets of the black Cinefoil and gaffer's tape them to the light. You want to make sure you use gaffer's tape and not duct tape, because duct tape is not intended to be used with studio strobes or anything that gets hot. So what happens with the duct tape is it melts and then it becomes very, very sticky on your light. Gaffer's tape, which is what I have here, is actually what's recommended. So let me create the barn doors and show you a couple tools and modifications. All right. You do not need to be precise. And so I could use 2 pieces of this or just 1, and then I'm going to gaff tape it. Now you can see by the size of this, if I curl this around, what I could actually do is if I were using a bare bulb, I could use this as a flag. What that means is I could use it kind of like a single side of the barn doors or something to block the light. So if I had this near a background and the light from this was spilling onto the background, I still wanted it to hit my subject over here, no problem. I could put on a piece of Cinefoil and it controls the spill of my light without having to, put up big V-flats or use barn doors. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut this in half. And each one of these can be one of my barn doors. Okay. All right. So now, with this light, I created the doors just like I have here. But of course, I can modify them. If I want less light up top, I can bend them and mold them. So I actually find it very useful, like barn doors, but with even more control. So this is my makeshift barn doors. But of course, I can also make something like a snoot or a grid. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a bigger piece of Cinefoil, tape it around, and then I can narrow, by squeezing, narrow the front of it to make a very small highlight, very small spotlight, or open up the front so that I can have a larger swath of light. And if I want to, I can get even more particular and make it more of an oval or make it more horizontal. And so I actually get more control than I would get out of a snoot or a grid. So let's take a look. Grab a piece of gaffer's tape. And so I can have a wider swath of light, or I can narrow it down and make just a tiny highlight. Now, as you can see, this is not an exact circle, and so if you actually wanted a circular, even highlight on the background, a snoot or a grid would be easier. But if I mold this, I can get it close, but I don't have the ability to change the shape with these either. And so you can see, I can create a flag to block light, or I can create barn doors to control the narrow beam of light to give me a really crisp highlight, for example. Or if I just want a spotlight, a little area of light on my subject or on the background, I can close up the Cinefoil to give me that spotlight effect. Cinefoil for a roll like this, which I believe is 1 foot by 50 feet, is somewhere around $30 to $40. But again, each one of these modifiers may be an equivalent cost or significantly more. So that is a great DIY solution.